Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast. Best of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL wire site that covers Arizona Cardinals. After a short layoff, because the Cardinals have not played since Thursday, it is episode 704 with my co-host, Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, as we've had a few days to mull over what we saw on Thursday night, Seth. A disappointing 23-20 loss on a second week in a row, last second field goal by a division opponent. What did you take away from that game first and foremost?
I think the first thing you look at is that, the division within itself is relatively close and competitive. And so that's important. The problem became something that we've talked about, is that they just can't be conservative. Like, you can't expect to beat good teams like the Seahawks, like the 49ers, those teams playing the way you did against teams like New Orleans and Carolina. Because when you do that, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And so that's kind of what I took away from it, is that there's not like a gulf like there had been previously between the Cardinals and their rivals, but there is maybe a more concerning gulf between the coaches.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, as we note, because the division has three teams. The 49ers, after losing on Sunday to the Jaguars, 49ers continue to have injury concerns, as Brock Purdy might be missing another game this week. The Rams look good, but are beatable. Like, if you look at what they did against the Colts, they played a very tough Colts team. The Seahawks look good. They've got 3-3-1 teams, and the Cardinals now in last place at 2-2, and unfortunately behind the eight ball in terms of the division, because they are 0-2 in their first two divisional games, with 4 left later on in the season. And I guess kind of the narrative, it was a 23-20. The story was obviously was about the offense. That was the talking point of the entire broadcast. It's been the talking points since then. It was Kyler Murray, it was Drew Petzing, it was Marvin Harrison. Before we dive into many of the things, what did we see that was good from the offense? Unfortunately, it was the 4th consecutive week they have failed to reach 300 yards overall. They didn't. They fell down. They fell behind 20-6. So they had only had, for the first 3 quarters, 2 field goals. Was there anything positive that you took away from what they did, whether it's the beginning or the totality of the performance?
I think you look at the ending of the game in the last, several drives, and you look at it and you go, why is this not how they play early? Why is this not how aggressive they are early in the game? And I saw some comments out there that were like, oh, well, Seattle was playing soft, blah, blah. They weren't. I mean, we saw that they were still bringing the heat. They were still bringing pressure. They were still trying to stay disruptive against the Cardinals. The Cardinals just, relied more on their quarterback to make big plays, and their offense to make plays that could work out. And it's that old chestnut that you and I talk about all the time, of it just seems like there's no complementary football with this group. The defense does a fairly nice job. I mean, we talked a little bit about it in our group chat during the game. They especially in the first half, it was very feast or famine, right? Like you saw some different things from the defense, whereas the offense was just all putrid in the first half, right? You had the interception that ended up, they caused a fumble and recovered it, but then you had the other interception when it seemed like they were finally getting things going, right? Like it's like, oh, here we go. But in the second half, I mean, you look at it, just 4 possessions. They punted their first possession, then they got a field goal, and then it was just kind of surgical things that we've been wanting to see that we saw. So where is that urgency early in the game, especially against good teams, especially coming off a game where we saw the same thing? I mean, we're going to get to that, but I think that's the biggest concern, right? Is like, we saw that when they want to spread it out and throw the ball around, they're not bad at it. The problem became like, why are they not willing to do that consistently, especially early in the game? Why are they so hell-bent on establishing the run, right? Like that's what's so interesting.
I think in part it was trying to take advantage of their strengths, which was especially early on, like before last season and early last season. I mean, when your best 2 players on offense are James Conner and Trey McBride, it makes sense to kind of build an offense like that. And we've wondered about Drew Petzing's wide receiver use, but I can understand why you would want to do that, why you would want to kind of establish a run, because Kyler does better when there is a balance. Like his performances are much more dominant when there is a balanced performance. You've got it running back in James Conner. It allows you to play heavy with 12 personnel, 13 personnel, because of the type of tight end that Trey McBride is. But now with Connor out for the rest of the year, things have to change a little bit. And I guess the first thing that we saw was almost completely abandoning 12 and 13 personnel, which made from one week to the next, they became a much more traditional looking offense. They ran, I think I saw the numbers were out of 54 of 67 plays or snaps that there were, 54 of them were with 3 receivers on the field, which is something we have not seen much of. But when you take James Conner out of the equation, it might make more sense to open things up, especially with the type of runner stylistically that Trey Benson is compared to Connor.
Right. Benson's almost that big play runner, right? He's not the grinder. He's not the grinded out. He's not the guy that's going to go, 2, 8, 8, 9, 12, 14, like what we've seen from Connor. What he's going to do is he's going to pop some big runs early, right? He'll go 2, 2, 30, 1, 1, 25. Like that's his style. Whereas Connor's like, he's averaging, 2.8, 2.8 yards per carry for 2.5 quarters. And then that third and fourth quarter, it's like, how does he have 120 yards rushing and averaging over 5 yards a carry?
Yeah. And I will say this, the running attack, the rush attack was more efficient. It wasn't productive. They only ended up with 89 rushing yards the entire game, but it was a much more efficient rushing attack. It wasn't great. And I wondered if, I think part of it was the philosophical change, the kind of the scheme change or the formation change, but also you're putting Benson into a role that he probably is more accustomed to in his football life, and that is being the guy. He's the number one. And then you put him, Marty Mercado back into that third down role where he's quite productive, he's quite efficient. The rushing numbers, it wasn't so they had the 129-yard run from Murray, and after the 29-yard run, so you take the 60 carries, the 60 yards that they had outside of that play, you ended up with 60 yards on 16 carries, which still wasn't great. It was 3.8 yards, but that's better than it was the previous several games where if you took away the explosive runs, like the one or two big runs, they were averaging under 3 a carry. And so I think that one thing that we're going to see, and I hope to continue to see it, is that the run game, while it was not run heavy by any means, the running game was a little bit more efficient. And I think that was in part because because, Benson was in a role that probably suits him more. They gave him the third down role with that was DeMercado's role because they wanted to increase his touches, his impact on the offense, but they did that without reducing James Conner's, and as a result, Benson, who I, in the amount of times I paid attention, has done a fine job in pass protection, but it's a role that is different than what he's done. And I'll say this again: I don't recall seeing it in practice or the preseason either. So I think this is something that is fairly new in terms of number of reps for him. And so I think that got a little extra settled down. I think we have to talk about the pass game. I mean, we look at Kyler Murray's 2 interceptions, and when we're looking at a situation where we're in a situation where if Kyler has to, the Cardinals really are only able to succeed if he's near perfect. And if he turns the ball over at all, whether it's his fault or not, the Cardinals don't end up with much of a chance. I think he did overall a pretty good job in the passing game, but the entire broadcast was almost dedicated to the performance of Marvin Harrison Jr. and how that talking point continues to be what it's been the biggest storyline this year for the Cardinals. It's what's wrong with Marvin Harrison. And do you think that it is as much a mental thing as anything else, that he's putting pressure on himself to produce and as a result isn't playing full speed football?
Yeah, I think that's some of it. I think the other part of it is that you've got a guy that's used to success and he's having adversity for the first time, and now it's difficult.
Honestly, it's almost like he had a little bit of the yips.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the drops, great. You're like, why are you dropping those? And it's made worse because he's not getting lots of other easy opportunities to kind of get in rhythm, like many other receivers do. Like if we watched the Monday night game and you saw, I know he's not their number one, but you saw Bo Nix, really quick line of scrimmage throw to Troy Franklin, and things like that. Like they don't do that for Marv. They don't design anything to get him touches early and sort of in a rhythm to feel, you get a couple of catches, you pick up a first down, they get the juices going. And the next thing you know, like the only throws that he gets towards him are the tougher throws. And I think they would do they're not doing themselves any favors in terms of how Harrison produces by not doing that.
Well, and some of it just comes down to, we've talked about it quite a bit. They're all of a sudden very conservative early in games, right? And so it's going to be a play action, or it's going to be, if it's third and long, they're going to throw the ball. And, it becomes really obvious when they're going to throw the ball. It almost seems like, right? Like there's rarely any variety or things like that in terms of what they're trying to do. And you look at little things, right? You look at things like average average depth of target. On third and less than 3, they're rarely throwing the ball beyond the sticks. It's usually a swing pass, something of that nature. And that goes almost at every level until you get to fourth down. And it's a weird thing because on fourth down, they throw beyond the sticks, but and there's only been 2 plays, so it's not like we have a huge sample size, but on these other plays, it's always short of the stick. And you wonder why. There's a lot of interesting things. First downs, he's only attempted 40 passes this year. Second and 10 pluses, he's attempted 16 passes this year. And so
that's a crazy stat to me.
Right. And so you look at that and it's like, but here, Jess, think about this. 3rd and 10 passes, he's only attempted 13 this year. And almost all of them are attempted short of the stick. So 3rd and 10 plus, their average depth of target 6.5 yards, which means obviously there are probably 3 or 4 in that 13 that are a little beyond, but most of them are, short check downs, things of that nature. And it's because when you're in obvious passing situations, nobody respects you because you don't have a variety of things. It's okay, it's going to Trey. If not, look at Marv. If Marv isn't running hard because he's not the first option, it's okay, it's going to be a check down to Trey Benson or Amari DiMercato or James Conner, right? Like that's kind of how it's been. And so the question becomes, how do you change those things for this franchise or this team? Just like, to me, it's wild that on his throws when they need between 4 and 6 yards, his average depth of target's longer than when it's 10 plus yards. And I know it's an obvious situation, but it just kind of tells the story of what's wrong with his offense. Is it's live to fight another day, which isn't a bad thing, but when you're going against good teams, you have to have a little pressure in what you're doing.
That said, Marv came alive late, and you could tell it was a huge weight off his shoulder when he caught the touchdown pass. And, I think that means that we can expect to see a little bit more consistency, but like there was less variety in formations. They had 6 players who caught passes as opposed to 8 or 9 the previous games. They brought in Xavier Weaver for a play or 2. They had no Zay Jones, and so it was more Greg Dortch in the passing game. And we've seen how that maybe affects things a little bit. But, the talk of this, do you think, like everyone's talking, Drew Petzing needs to go, Drew Petzing needs to go. Like, whether or not you do that, here's the thing. Firing the offensive coordinator at this point of the year, when you have a team and a scheme that is based on that, what's going to change? Like, what is firing Petzing doing? And I think one of the more positive things that we have seen was that there was a personnel change last week, that there were adjustments. And ultimately, I don't think this is necessarily a Petzing thing as so much it is as a Gannon thing in terms of philosophy. Like, people want to bring in Kurt Warner. People like Gannon brought Petzing in for a reason. Petzing's offensive scheme is put together. His play calling decisions, they're all under the blanket of what Gannon wants to see. Now, have we seen Gannon be willing to change things up a little bit? Yes. But ultimately, as we talked about on this show before, is Gannon is showing that he really is like a lot of defensive-minded head coaches. It is, hey, he talks about explosive plays. He talks about this and that, but ultimately it's the ball is it is control the ball. And
yeah, and it's interesting because you go to the opposite side of that, right? And it's Mike McDaniel, Mike McDonald, from last game, right? And the Seahawks are aggressive, but they're aggressive within reason. Like, think about this, Jess. Their passing offense, it wasn't like it was astoundingly better than the Cardinals in that game. It was just timed better.
Yeah, and I think part of that is the personality of the quarterback is like Kyler really I believe he tries to, because we saw him under Cliff Kingsbury, like he wants big plays. I think he really is trying to play within the system that he's given. Like he buys into what they're doing, and so if they want him to be careful with the football, he's going to be careful with the football unless it's a dire situation. Now, he had a couple of those things like the both the throws that got picked off, and you can't really like one, there was a miscommunication between him and Harrison. The other one, Harrison just basically gave it to Ernest Jones after bobbling it. But Sam Darnold also loves to rip the football. Like he loves and he has to be reined in. So what you have with Darnold and Clinton versus Mike McDonald and Clinton Kubiak is that you have a quarterback who's even more aggressive in personality and has to be reined in, while Kyler is 100% willing, at least under this coaching staff, to follow what his coaches are asking him to do, as opposed to in Cliff Kingsbury, like he wanted to make more happen than what was, and I think that was part of the problem in 2022, is that some of the criticism that he took is that he wanted, like he was changing a lot because he wanted to do more. And when Colt McCoy took over, it's like, okay, get rid of the ball. He was just following exactly what the game plan was, and Kyler was trying to make things happen.
Well, and you look at it, right? Like, and I get that the Seahawks had a little bit of a lead in the game, and so it lent itself to running the ball slightly more. But you look at the game and the way the game went. Darnold only threw the ball 26 times. Kyler 41 times. The Seahawks had two guys with more rushing attempts than the Cardinals' leading guy in attempts. And we talked about Kenneth Walker, right? His game wasn't overly efficient. 19 carries for 81 yards. I mean, that's barely over 4 yards per carry.
21 of that came in one big play.
Right.
The Cardinals.
The Cardinal. I mean, but you look at Jess, look at the game script. It's wild to look at this. And I get it. It was 17-3 at one point, 17-6, and blah, blah, blah. But look at the game script. You had 35 rushing attempts for 155 yards. And it looks like, 155 yards given up on the ground. That's a lot. And then you're like 35 attempts. That's not good. Like that's not great by any stretch of the imagination. They were 6 of 13 on third down. They were 0 for 1 on fourth down. 18 for 26 for 242. Like all of their numbers are very nondescript, but they put up 384 yards of total offense and they scored 23 points. And that makes you go, okay, they look like, a good to very good offense. And it's like, no, they're just methodical. Like they don't ever panic. They don't ever look, frenzied. And even in that game, we talked about it. Like the thing that gets me about the way people react to the Cardinals is that there's no like nuance to it, right? So we talked about it. The Cardinals get the ball 5 plays, 18 yards. The Seahawks get the ball, they go 6 plays, 38 yards, and turn the ball over on downs. Obviously the interception, but then they get the ball back. They go 6 plays for 33 yards and a field goal. So they have a 3-0 lead. And then that's that complementary football we talk about a little bit, right? The Seahawks immediately get the ball back. They go 77 yards and 7 plays and score a touchdown. And they're immediately leading the game. Now, again, I'm not going to act like that the Cardinals defense can never give up points. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, isn't it kind of ironic that like the team that then the next 2 series, you see 10 plays for 13 yards from the opponent and 2 punts, and we don't discuss the fact that those are sandwiched in between 2 scoring drives that totaled 167 yards. Like, that's the stuff that gets me, is that we just, and don't get me wrong, both sides need to play complementary football better, but you kick a field goal, you go up 3-0, and immediately the Seahawks get the lead back. And then it's just kind of that jostling from there for the next 4 series on each side of the ball. And then the Seahawks, right before the half, get the ball back, take up 2 minutes and 45 seconds and go 90 yards for a touchdown. And it was like, okay, like you had those 2 excellent defensive series in a row, right? The like I said, 10 plays, 13 yards. That's phenomenal. But that was in between a 38-yard drive that you only got off the field on 4th down because they ran an interesting play. I'm not even going to say it was a good play, right? Like, it was an interesting play. And then you have a 77-yard drive and a 90-yard drive. It's like this defense is really, really playing feast or famine. Right. And it matches the energy of the offense, unfortunately, right? Like,
let's dive into the defensive side of the ball to go this point. Coming on next on the Races Here about podcast, Best Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's look at the defensive performance that Seth just started mentioning. That's coming on next on Recipes Red. We're back on the Races Here podcast, Best Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking defense in the game. Seth already started talking about that. It was really feast or famine, and as good as the defense was, they also were their bugaboo. Their bugaboo was the big play. They gave up a 36-yard pass. Like, if you look at like, there was a 36-yard pass play, 29-yard pass play, a 32-yard pass play. And if I pull up the game book, we can see just how many plays that the Cardinals gave up that were because they kept them contained until they didn't, is kind of what it was. And ultimately, like, that last drive, like, it was the game-winning drive that they had. Ultimately, it came down to the fact that they had that monster play. And so the Seahawks had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plays of 20 yards or more. The Cardinals had 1. And that
was a Kyler Murray scramble.
Correct? It was a Kyler scramble. Yeah. And so they gave up 7 plays that were 20 yards or more. That's like just right there. And like, if we add up, now if we do a little quick math on those plays, through 6 plus 32 plus 29 plus 24 plus 22 plus 21 plus 20, 184 of the 384 total. So 7 plays accounted for nearly half of their yards.
Well, and that's the thing, we talk about is, there's this idea of complementary football. And again, the Cardinals offense is middling at best, and anemic at worst. But they show flashes of where you're like, okay, why is this not more consistently what the offense looks like, right? Like, why do they not go that aggressive more consistently? The defense is just kind of befuddling at times.
Yes.
You mentioned it, right? Like, so you get that 3-0 lead, and then you come out and it's 12 yards to Elijah Arroyo. It's not like, listen to these plays, just 12, 9, 21, 8, incomplete, 11, 16. An 8 and a 9-yard play were other than an incomplete pass, those were literally like it's almost like they sleepwalk through drives. And we talked about this in the previous game. Or sorry, the Carolina game. The thing that gets me is that they rarely ever get it when they have their bad drives. They rarely ever get in third down situations. And that was the case in this one. First down, 2nd and 1, first down, 2nd and 2, incomplete pass, 3rd and 2, first down, touchdown. Like, they had 1 third down. It was a 3rd and 2, and the Seahawks were already in field goal range. So the Seahawks were like, we can do a lot of different things in that case. And I know it's kind of easy to say, right? Like, oh yeah, just get them in 3rd and long situations. It makes it easy. But that is kind of a reality to it, right? Like, if you're not forcing third downs, you can't get off the field. And
No,
you look at
that you have to win 1st and 2nd down to get to 3rd down and win, and
doesn't
really
that
inconsistent with that?
Well, and doesn't that just seem like a broader issue of the team, right? Like, you have, for instance, the Cardinals. So the Cardinals get the ball back with 5:40 left in the game. They get it to 3rd and 2, and Michael Carter gets his first carry of the season. And I think all of us were kind of like, huh? Like, we're fine with Michael Carter being back. We're excited, but 3rd and 2, and you ran him on a simple duo out of shotgun. Like, what are we doing? And then that touchdown drive. Okay, so we go back to the Seahawks touchdown drive. 3rd and 2 was the only 3rd down. Then their second touchdown drive, first down, 2nd down, 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down and 1 from the Arizona 1 for a touchdown. Like, again, 1 3rd down the entire series. It's just such a befuddling, like, lack of ability to make plays. And again, you go back to it, right? Elijah Arroyo, 32-yard reception. Sam Darnold, 24-yard scramble. Zach Charbonnet, 15-yard run. Zach Charbonnet, 2-yard run. So that was the first, like, stop on the drive. 4 plays in before they got anything less than a first down. Again, it's hard to criticize a defense that's playing hard and that at times is playing at an insanely elite level. But at the same time, it's like, what is happening? Like, how are you so inconsistent from drive to drive? And I and people all the time are like, well, they're just on the field so much. Okay, I don't disagree.
They're on the field because of their own fault.
Right. I don't disagree
They're the
with
ones
that.
giving up first downs before 3rd down.
Right. And so but we're not talking about late in the game when they're gassed, right? Like, we're talking about a team that has been out for one series, literally just one series. Your offense scores after a nearly 5-minute of game time drive, and you immediately come out and give up 70 yards for a touchdown in and you get 1 third down. And so it's just stuff like that. Like, I'm not even like overly upset. The pass to Jackson Smith and Jigba late in the game that set things up, I would actually lay at the feet personally more of the DC. Their best player, that they've got to get, about 25 yards total to be in a good spot. Why are you soloing maybe the best receiver in the NFL currently against a guy that's good in Max Melton? But
and as you noted during the game in our group text, I think it was you that was they paid attention, is that because Melton, that move that JSN made, Max had bit on a previous throw, and so they knew they could beat him because they'd done it before. They go to the double move and Max bites on the first move, and then Smith and Jigma's open. Sam Darnold make a heck of a throw. The receiver made a fantastic catch, but it was one of those cases again, because for the second game in a row defensively, because in the first 2 weeks, the Cardinals came away with wins because they had their best defensive players make big plays in the final minute. And they didn't get that the last 2 weeks. They didn't get that in the last 2 weeks.
No, not at all. And that's, again, what the issue becomes, and just in general, right? Like, you need a consistency to really create something. And we're talking on both sides of the ball. And those of you that follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, like, you'll see that my biggest takeaway from this group, this team, is that they're boring. They're average at everything. Like, they literally are. I think it was footballinsights.com. And then if you look at Ben Baldwin, literally just now. So thanks, Ben, for having that up there. They're literally, like, in the cross sections of offensive EPA per play and defensive EPA per play, they're literally almost at the 0-0 mark on both sides of the ball. Like, they don't do anything overly great on offense, and they don't do anything overly great on defense. They're just boring. And that's what the hard thing is that you have a team that you feel like should be better, that's playing an incredibly boring brand of football that just makes you not even, like, just the biggest complaint I truly have about this, I don't even want to watch the games because they're just boring. Like, there's no entertainment value in these games.
Yeah. On the bright side, we are getting some plays made by players who need to make plays. Calais Campbell has another sack. Josh Sweat has a sack in a third game in a row. So 4 games, 3 sacks. Darius Robinson had his first sack of the season. That was good to see.
By the way, real quick on the Josh Sweat thing, isn't it also interesting that, and I think you would kind of agree with me on this, that the Cardinals don't seem to convert those opportunities like other teams do against them. We can lament the interceptions, whatever. The first one, we'll just pin it on Kyler. I have some thoughts on it, but again, as a guy that understands how hard it is to play with a mobile quarterback, like, if you're not sure what he's doing, like, you're not going to run that route, right? You're not going to finish that crosser. The second one is what it is. Marvin, like you said, yips, whatever verbiage you want to use, he just, as the kids say, sold on that one. then you have the Josh Sweat sack fumble, and there's 3 Cardinals in the area, and 1 Seahawks lineman, pounces on the ball. And I get it. That's a tough play. But that's kind of the overarching theme of this team this year, more than anything else, is that there are plays to be made in big moments, and they happen. And then but the other team somehow survives it. Whereas like for the Cardinals, it's almost the opposite, right? Like the other team finds a way to make a big play and really change the look of the game overall. Because think about this, Jess. The Cardinals recover that. There's no field goal that takes the Seahawks up to 17-3. The Seahawks scored on that drive. That's it. That's a massive play. That just kind of gets overlooked because it was a great play by Sweat. It shows up great on the stat sheet as we're talking about right now, right? Like another sack for Josh Sweat. Hell yeah. Like we're all excited, as we should be. But it's like, man, can we just get one play like that where it's like not just the sack, but you get the fumble, you create this big opportunity for your team? Because I think so far this season, and absolutely correct me if I'm wrong, but like the biggest play in that type of situation is probably whoever forced the fumble after the interception. Like that was the biggest play, and like, oh crap, the Cardinals threw an interception. Okay, never mind, it doesn't matter because they punched it out. Like
Hilda did it.
yeah. So like that's kind of been the biggest, whatever you want to call it, luck, skill, whatever verbiage you want to use. That's been like that's the one play that they've had. So I don't know, man. It's always interesting to me. I don't know if it's luck. I really don't. Like I don't know how to describe it, but it's definitely something that like it just feels like as Cardinals fans, we're always like, oh, great play, Josh, and then kind of, I don't want to say ignore the fact that there was an even bigger play to be made there, because again, it was huge sack in that situation that really didn't matter because they still drove down the field and scored.
Yeah. Coming next on the Rest of Your podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the web. Let's move on and talk about one final bit, and that would be, do we need to make changes? That's coming next on Rise Up, See Red. Back on the Rise Up, See Red podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the web. Changes to be made. What do we got to do? We already saw that there was a shift away from the big personnel offensively, and I'm wondering if that's going to be, especially with James Conner injured for the rest of the season, if we're going to see more 3 wide sets. And so we're going to see less Tip Ryman. We're going to see less Elijah Higgins, unless they build a lead, and then they can focus on running the ball with Trey Benson. Also a concern, Trey Benson's hurt, which I think was why Michael Carter was in the game late in the game. How severe it is, don't know. He didn't practice Monday. And since there was no injury report, Jonathan Gannon simply said, we had a bunch of guys out there who, out who, for one reason or another, the injury report come out Wednesday, blah, 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 blah. So thing to watch, Michael Carter got signed to the active roster. So maybe that means that Trey's going to be a little bit down for this week against Tennessee. But I already brought up the notion about firing Drew Petzing. What does Drew Petzing what does firing Petzing do this year? Would it do anything? And do you think it would change anything offensively?
Well, the question becomes, and you posed it perfectly, and it's something that we've talked about, ad nauseum in our group chat. Is this really a Petzing issue? I mean, if it is, then yeah, a change needs to be made. But this feels like Petzing is running the offense that his head coach, the defensive guru wants to see, and that it's conservative, don't make mistakes, don't don't turn the ball over, don't give the other team short field, let us win the game for you. And that's just, it's worked out twice and it hasn't worked out twice, right? And I don't want to put it on the defense. Chad Ryland holds some blame for missing the kick. That again, I was talking to somebody that's kind of a special teams guru, and he's like, oh, that's on the coach. Like, you haven't kicked that knuckleball kick all game, and now you ask a kicker to do it with 20 whatever seconds left in it.
Well, and Pat McAfee said it. He's like, you squib a kick, you don't know what it's going to do.
Right.
You don't know what it's going to do.
And that's the thing is like, so, again, you make a call. And again,
they were kicking it short of the goal line all game. It would have made sense just to do what they'd been doing all game.
Right. A high lofting kick that takes them 7 seconds to return the ball to the 22. But, that's neither here nor there. But again, like, if that was a call from the coach, like, was the execution piss poor? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Nobody's going to argue that. But to your point, like, why are you making that call with that in that situation? Like, what is the point in that situation to make that call when you've not done it all game? And I get it. I was reading, it's funny enough, before the game, I was reading that on those squib kicks, it takes an average of 12 or 13 seconds for the return. So they're thinking to themselves, okay, this will 28 seconds left or however many it was. This will take it under 20. I mean, that's the easiest math we can do. Under 20 seconds. Okay, that's big. So then they have very little room to work with, in that time. They basically have 3 plays. And anything inbounds, they've got to take their final timeout. Game is over, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I mean, I get it, I guess, from that aspect of things, but when you're asking your players to do something and then they don't execute, whose fault is that? And again, I'm not trying to absolve the players. I'm not trying to absolve the coaches. I'm just genuinely asking, like, hey, this is what we want to do, but it's not working, or we don't do it well. You talked about the offensive focus, especially 12-13 running gap scheme, running plays, doing these different things. It's not working. We can debate on why, but it's just not working. So do you just continue to do it because that's what you do? Or do good coaches, do good teams adapt and change how they do it because, it's not working? And I think that would be where I would fire somebody. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. Hey, Drew, this isn't working. Well, this is what we do. Okay, then you're an idiot and we need to move on. Like, but if it's like, hey, this isn't working. Okay, we're 4 games in. This hasn't worked. We're 2-2. So it's not like, it's, yeah, we missed a win or two. There's a good chance we could be 4-0, but it is what it is. And let's be honest, the injury to James was kind of the nail in the coffin of what they wanted to do. But as you so adequately pointed out, like, okay, that's a short week. We're not going to just make changes on a short week, right? Like, we're not just going to be like, all right, we don't run 12 and 13 personnel at all. We're not going to run these run schemes anymore. Like, now it's like, okay, we'll start to change things. We'll go heavier 10-11 personnel than we have all season, but we can't just, change everything at once. You'll see more of a change this week. You'll see, as the weeks unfold, especially, now that you have some time. So if Drew was basically like, nope, not changing, then I think you have to, right? Because that's just arrogance at that point. This is what we do. This is who we are. Well, who you are is boring as hell and not working. So let's try something different. But if it, I mean, I think your point, my point, our point has kind of been like, is it really the offensive coach? Like, and that's not to absolve Petzing from everything. That's just a question that has to be asked, right? Like, is it really the offensive coach, or is this what the defensive head coach wants, and he's just doing what he's told? And
Gannon's really good about that. Like, he falls on the sword. It's like, I'm never going to have problem with the offensive playing calling because I know what plays are being called. Like, he's saying that he's building the game plan offensively. This isn't like when Cliff Kingsbury basically let Vance Joseph do defense on his own.
Right, exactly.
Like, you're the defensive head like Cliff was the head coach, but Vance was the defensive head coach. And while there was some communication that basically Cliff didn't mess with Vance at all, let him do his thing. Gannon doesn't do that. Like, Nick and Drew both work closely with him in terms of their goals offensively, defensively. So Drew's doing that. The one change I want to see is within their scheme, within what they do, find ways to get Marv the ball more easily early in the game. It is an old adage, and the problem is he's not mouthy like other receivers, but he has the same type of body language on the field, doesn't he? Like, he does the same type of, like, he doesn't sell out every play
when he
and
knows
look like he's engaged. He does number one wide receiver things where when he's not targeted early on, his body language changes on the field. He loafs through some routes. He's not 100% all the time. You know what fixes that? Getting guys like Marv the ball early and often, giving him opportunities, give him a quick wide receiver screen at one. They used to do that with Fitz all the time, but you do that with your playmakers early, they're going to feel warmed up, and it opens things up immensely during the game. So you throw them a little 7-yard out, you throw him a quick slant, you do for him one of those wide receiver screens that are designed for someone else. Just give him the ball a couple times, let him do things, and then you start going after him. You start targeting him in the tricky routes, the things down the field, which help. Not only you need Marv selling out those routes early on, even down the field, to open things underneath. It's not just getting him his catches, but he needs to be engaged so that his routes are true deceptions for the opposing defense.
Yeah, and you need him to be a big play guy, and that's something that we've seen capable. Obviously, the 16-yard touchdown, massive play in the game, huge moment for the team, something that I think everybody kind of involved needed, right? Like, everybody was like, oh God, that was nice. We all needed to see that. That's what we've been waiting for. But I mean, overall, like you said, man, it just comes down to having a better balance and a better approach of, like, yeah, we're running, or we want to be a run first team, but we've invested heavily in improving this passing game. So let's do that. Let's show that a little bit, and hopefully that does happen. Quite frankly, I'd like to get the ball, and I know people are gonna be like, they get the ball to him a lot. I'd like to get the ball to Trey McBride in space a little more. Like, let him.
So hard to tackle. Like
right.
You get on those tight end screens once he gets rolling. Oh my gosh! Like, you get in traffic too, because those screen plays, they're messy. They're messy down the field because you've got the other guys around. And Trey's a guy. Oh my goodness! Now, granted, you get him in space in the red zone, he gets tackled. That's just
I know.
how it goes.
I don't know. I still don't understand that.
He's hurdling guys, he's sidestepping guys, but inside the 10, it's like shoestring tackle. But no, those wide receiver screens, he's really good at because he moves really well. Yes, and I think there's one thing I maybe you agree at this point. We got to make this change. It's time for Will Hernandez. It's time for Will. Isaiah's been bad.
He's been really
bad. And that sucks because like he looks so good all offseason, but during the game, he's the case in point. What was the game that the first sack that they gave up to Seattle? Nwosu got the sack, and it was Trey Benson and Isaiah Adams. They had two guys to block one guy, and Nwosu just sidestepped them both untouched and got to Kyler. I don't know how that happens, but that's not supposed to happen. It's time. We need Will back, and hopefully he's a semblance of the Will Hernandez that he's been, because it's not been good. Now, as for moving off of Evan Brown, some people I've seen people say put Beecham. Like, Beecham's never played guard.
And by the way, Beecham's been terrible in his very limited, but terrible in his playing time.
In fairness, he's an old left tackle.
No, and that's the thing. He very much is, and he had to play against Nick Bosa for part of a game, and then Mykel Williams for a little bit. And so those are good, like you said, those are good pass rushers. But yeah, I mean, he did not look great in that game. Yeah, so I mean, those are changes that need to be made. Let me ask you this, Jess, and obviously with the benefit of hindsight, we can make this statement. But do you think, with how they wanted to do things, the way the running back room was built, and the fact that neither guy played 17 games, which is not uncommon for running backs, by the way, but neither guy was available for 17 games, that it was not smart to just completely ignore the running back position this offseason? And we could talk about the entire offense, but I'm specifically asking about the running back based on, and obviously nobody expects James Conner's, career potentially to end. But I mean, Benson in a part-time role only stayed healthy for 13 games last year. I think James was 13 or 14. I don't remember off the top of my head. Like, doesn't a day 3 running back at that point make sense? Because you're like, you've expounded on this a number of times, but what you have in DeMarcado and Michael Carter. Bam Knight was a bit of a revelation, but it's not like he's doing anything in the game, right? So what you have in DeMarcado and Michael Carter.
Maybe that's why, because they knew they had a guy like Michael Carter as number 5.
So
on the depth chart.
So then you're thinking like, oh, if anything happens to Connor long term, we know we're going to have to change the offense, the running scheme a little bit, and now we have Benson and Carter in those roles, as opposed to I mean, that's just kind of my thought process. Is one, the more we get into the Benson era, he's not necessarily a complement to James Conner as much as he is kind of like a counterpoint to Conner, right? Like, oh, you've got the rugged, wear them down type, and then you've got the explosive, like, get him outside. Yes, he's big and physical, but let him get vertical and make plays. I was thinking about that the other day, because I'm just like, I'm like, man, obviously it's hindsight, but if you wanted to run the ball a lot, you definitely didn't like make it seem like that this offseason by basically just running everything back and saying like, we'll see if Isaiah Adams is good enough, and kind of going with that philosophy. And now you're talking about, obviously Adams is one of the bigger issues. He might be the worst guard in the NFL right now. And that's not hyperbole. That's just the reality. He's not playing well. What he was supposed to be great at, he's really, really struggling at, which is run blocking. So, like you said, hopefully Will Hernandez is 80% of what he was last year when he was, wrecking people and playing at a high level. Because, man, they need it.
They do. And with that, we'll wrap up this edition of the Rise of Zero podcast, Best Hour Cardinals Talk. We've got 2 more shows coming this week. I will have Mark Mahalko from Titans Wire. I will record that next, and then later in the week, Seth and I will do our preview show. And then this feels like we'll talk more about that on Friday. This should be a get well game for the Cardinals to reset and then to kind of reevaluate before they hit a tougher part of the schedule. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Roll!